Throw that toolbox away before it scratches the floor, Damian Cross said, his smile polished enough for the cameras. The security guard lifted the rusty metal box from Noah Brooks's small hands, and the boy lunged after it. "Please, that was Mom's," he whispered. The latch snapped open. A silver prototype slid across the white expo floor, dragging the yellowed edge of a folded blueprint behind it. Ethan Brooks dropped to one knee, shielding his son with one arm. Then Victoria Hale stopped walking. Her eyes locked on the tiny device. "Open that toolbox right now." 3 hours earlier, the fluorescent lights inside the Hale Technologies Innovation Expo buzzed like tired insects above rows of glass booths, chrome displays, and million-dollar machines that hummed as if they belonged to a cleaner world. Ethan Brooks stood near the service entrance in his faded denim jacket, one hand around the handle of his rusty toolbox, the other resting lightly on Noah's shoulder. His work boots still carried a faint dusting of garage grit from Harper Road, and the smell of motor oil clung to him no matter how carefully he had washed. Noah, 9 years old, held a paper badge against his chest with both hands, smoothing the corners the way children do when they are trying to be brave. "Dad," he said softly, "do you think they'll let us show it?" Ethan looked down at him and gave the kind of smile that did not promise too much. "We're here to tell the truth, buddy. That's enough for today." Across the hall, Damian Cross stood beneath a banner glowing with his name, shaking hands with judges, sponsors, and camera crews. His suit was charcoal gray, his teeth bright, his voice calm and generous as he thanked everyone for believing in independent innovation. No one watching him would have guessed that his eyes kept flicking toward the service entrance, toward the man with the toolbox. When Ethan reached the registration desk, the young event coordinator scanned his printed confirmation once, then again. Her smile tightened. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks. Your registration isn't in the system." Ethan slid the folded email across the counter. It had been printed at the garage, the ink slightly streaked near the bottom where Noah had spilled a drop of water that morning. "It was approved 6 weeks ago," Ethan said. "Booth C17. Safety retrofit category." The coordinator glanced at the paper as if it were something dirty. Behind her, a small monitor flashed red. "Registration not found." Ethan did not raise his voice. He only looked past the desk, toward the test rigs where a row of thermal controllers blinked under bright lamps. One of them was making a faint ticking sound, too soft for most people to notice, but wrong enough to pull his eyes to it. Noah heard his father stop breathing for half a second. "Dad!" Ethan's fingers tightened on the toolbox handle. At the same moment, Damian Cross turned from the stage and said, a little too quickly, "Security, please escort them out before this becomes a safety issue." And on the paper badge in Noah's hand, beneath the smeared ink and garage dust, Ethan noticed something cold enough to still his blood. The booth number C17 had been crossed out by someone else's pen. The crossed-out booth number sat in Noah's hands like a small wound. C17 had not been stamped by the system or printed by the garage printer. Someone had taken a black pen and drawn a hard line through it, then written "Visitor Hold" beneath it in neat block letters. Ethan looked at it for one quiet second, then folded the badge back into Noah's palm. "Keep that safe," he said. The event coordinator cleared her throat. "Sir, I need you to step aside. I registered. The system says you didn't. Then the system is wrong." Her smile did not move, but her eyes flicked toward his boots, his faded jacket, the oil-darkened crease beneath his thumbnail. Behind Ethan, 2 young engineers in tailored polos whispered just loudly enough for the line to hear. "Is he maintenance?" one said. "Maybe he got lost from the loading dock." Noah lowered his eyes. Ethan gently turned the boy's badge around so the crossed outside faced his jacket instead of the crowd. It was a small motion, barely noticeable, but Victoria Hale noticed it from 20 feet away. She stood near the center aisle with her tablet against her ribs, not interfering yet, only watching the way this man absorbed embarrassment without handing it to his child. Damian Cross approached with the easy confidence of someone walking across a stage he already owned. "Ms. Hale," he said warmly, "I'm sorry you're being pulled into this. These expos attract passionate outsiders. Most mean well, The phrase landed softly, almost kindly, and that made it worse. Passionate outsiders. Not inventors. Not applicants. Not peers. Ethan's jaw moved once, but he kept his voice low. I'm not asking for a booth anymore. I'm asking for 5 minutes with your safety team. Damien gave a sympathetic nod. And I admire that, truly. But if every mechanic with a theory could interrupt a certified product demonstration, we'd never build anything. The nearby judge chuckled under his breath. A silver-haired man with a sponsor pin on his lapel. He lifted Ethan's printed email between 2 fingers, careful not to touch the smeared corner. This is not a credential, Mr. Brooks. It's a printout. Noah looked up. My dad printed it at the garage because our laptop freezes. The judge smiled down at him with practiced patience. That's very sweet, son. But adults have to follow adult procedures. Ethan's hand settled on Noah's shoulder before the boy could answer. Not hard, just steady. He told the truth, Ethan said. That's also an adult procedure. A few people stopped pretending not to listen. The glass booths hummed around them, full of clean machines and polished promises. Somewhere nearby, a test fan clicked in a rhythm that was just slightly uneven. Ethan heard it again, that small wrong sound beneath the music of the expo. Tick, pause, tick tick. The same rhythm he had heard in his garage on the night the first controller smoked beside Claire's notebook. Victoria's eyes shifted from Ethan's face to the printed email, then to Damien. You mentioned a certified product demonstration, she said. Which product? Damien's smile stayed in place, but his fingers tightened around the edge of his presentation folder. My thermal controller platform. The burnout issue has already been addressed. Ethan looked up slowly. He had not said burnout. He had said bored. He had said safety. He had not said the word that had lived in his house for 3 years, written in Claire's careful hand beside failed test dates and coffee rings. Victoria caught the change in him, not fear, not anger, but recognition. Damien turned quickly toward security. Let's not make this uncomfortable for the child. Ethan stepped slightly in front of Noah, calm as stone. You're right, he said. Let's not. The judge slid the email back across the counter, and the paper stopped beside a smear of garage dust shaped like a thumbprint. Victoria stared at that stained confirmation, then at Damien's too-perfect smile, and for the first time, she did not look away. Victoria's eyes stayed on the stained confirmation just long enough for Damien to notice, and that was when the test rig behind them gave a sharp, ugly pop. A blue-white spark snapped beneath the acrylic cover, followed by the bitter smell of hot plastic. People stepped back. A young technician slapped the emergency stop once, then again, but the red warning light kept pulsing. Kill the load, someone shouted. It's not responding, the technician said, his voice cracking. Damien turned away from Ethan with theatrical annoyance. Everyone stay calm. It's a minor demo fault. Ethan did not move at first. He looked at Noah, then at the crowd pressing backward toward the glass rail. The boy's fingers were tight around the toolbox handle, his knuckles pale. Dad! Ethan heard the fear in that one word, and something in his face softened. Stay behind me, he said. Then he stepped toward the smoking controller. No vai. No invitación. No applause waiting. Just a machine about to hurt people and a room full of adults too proud to admit they were scared. He set the rusty toolbox on the floor, opened it only wide enough to take out the old Kolu with the worn grip, then closed the lid again with his boot so Noah would not have to guard everything alone. The technician looked at him, confused. Sir, you can't touch that. Then don't let me, Ethan said quietly. Pull the left breaker when I say. That's not the shutdown order. Damien cut in, still smiling, but the smile had gone thin. The shutdown order is what's failing, Ethan said. 3 short sentences. No heat in them. No pride. The fan clicked again. Faster now. Tick 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 like a clock running out of mercy. Ethan crouched beside the test stand, the harsh expo lights catching the grease permanently darkened into the lines of his hands. He did not yank wires or make a show of bravery. He simply loosened the small access plate beneath the controller, found the auxiliary lockout hidden behind a bracket, and turned the Kolu a quarter inch. "Now," he said. The technician pulled the breaker. The red light died. The room exhaled all at once. For a moment, no one thanked him. They were too busy realizing there might have been something to thank him for. Ethan stood, wiped the Kolu on the edge of his denim jacket, and put it back into the toolbox exactly where it belonged. Noah looked at him with wide eyes. "Why did you help them?" Ethan glanced toward the rig, where the technician was staring at the panel like it had betrayed him. "Because machines don't care who was rude first," he said. "And people were standing close." Victoria heard it. So did Damien. One heard character. The other heard danger. Damien gave a light laugh to the judge beside him, low enough to pretend it was private. Lucky guess from a garage man. But his eyes had dropped to the access plate Ethan had opened. Not to the smoke. Not to the crowd. To the hidden lockout. Victoria followed that glance and saw the first thing that truly did not fit. The lockout Ethan had used was not marked on the public diagram, not mentioned in the expo brochure, and not visible unless a person already knew where to look. The room did not thank Ethan for saving the rig. It reorganized itself around suspicion. Security stepped closer, not aggressively, but close enough for Noah to notice the polished black shoes beside the toolbox. Damien Cross lifted both hands in a calming gesture, the picture of professional restraint. "Ms. Hale, with respect, an unauthorized person just opened a live controller during a corporate demonstration. We cannot treat that like a favor." Victoria did not answer immediately. She looked at the dead red light, the loosened access plate, the young technician still breathing too fast, and Ethan standing with both hands visible at his sides. "He may have prevented a fire," she said. "Or created the appearance of preventing one," Damien replied gently. It was an elegant sentence, poisonous because it sounded reasonable. Ethan glanced down at Noah, whose face had gone pale with the effort not to cry. He reached for the toolbox handle, then stopped when Victoria raised one finger. "Nobody moves that box," she said. "Not him. Not security. Not you, Damien." The air changed. The hum of the expo seemed to sink behind the glass walls. Victoria ordered the toolbox carried into the internal test garage and sealed under camera, with one engineer from Hale, one event official, and one security officer watching. Ethan nodded once. "That's fair." Damien's smile twitched. Fair would be removing it from the floor before it contaminates chain of custody. Ethan looked at him for the first time with something sharper than anger. Chain of custody starts when people stop touching what isn't theirs. No one spoke for a beat. In the test garage, the lights were colder, flatter, showing every scratch on the stainless benches. The toolbox sat in the center like an old animal dragged into a hospital. Victoria watched through the glass as the security officer photographed the latch, the rusted corners, the oil-dark thumbprint near the handle. Noah stood beside Ethan, gripping the paper badge with the crossed-out booth number folded inward. When the engineer opened the top tray, there were only ordinary things at first. Worn sockets, a frayed roll of electrical tape, a stubby screwdriver, a rag stiff with old grease. Then, beneath a false layer of foam cut by hand, they found a clear plastic sleeve. Inside were 3 garage invoices from Harper Road Parts, a service log in Ethan's handwriting, and a pencil sketch of the same thermal layout Damien had been presenting on stage. The date on the oldest invoice was 3 years earlier than Damien's patent filing. Victoria leaned closer. Damien let out a quiet, sympathetic breath. Old invoices don't prove authorship. Parts are parts. A man can build a story around receipts. The judge nodded, relieved to have a reason not to be wrong. Ethan said nothing. He only pointed to the lower corner of the service log, where a line of numbers had been smudged by oil but not erased. "Can you put that under the side light?" he asked. The engineer slid the page beneath the angled inspection lamp. A faint imprint appeared under the smudge, pressed into the paper from the page that had once been above it. C-17 Retrofit Safety Trial. Noah whispered. "That was on Mom's blue folder." Damien spoke too quickly. "Children remember what adults tell them to remember." Victoria turned her head, just slightly, not because she believed Noah, because Damien had not asked which folder. Victoria turned fully toward Damien after he mentioned the blue folder without being told there was one. But she did not accuse him. Not yet. She simply laid her tablet flat on the stainless counter and said, "Then we test the machine, not the memories." The test garage went still in that special corporate way, quiet but not peaceful, with people pretending their silence was professionalism. 2 identical thermal controllers were rolled onto the bench, both unmarked, both pulled from Hale's failed demo inventory. A technician placed one in front of Damien, one in front of Ethan, then stepped back as if distance could protect him from choosing a side. Damien adjusted his cuffs. "I'm happy to demonstrate the approved repair," he said. "For everyone's comfort, we should avoid improvisation." Ethan looked at Noah, then at the young technician whose hands were still trembling from the earlier spark. "You ever replace one of these under pressure?" he asked. The technician shook his head. "Then stand where you can see." Damien's mouth tightened. "This is not a classroom." Ethan opened his toolbox, removed the same worn Kolu, and placed it beside the controller instead of picking it up. "It should be," he said. Victoria's hand paused above her tablet. Around them, the air conditioner clicked on, and the thin hiss of cold air filled the space between polished shoes and grease-stained work boots. Damien began first. He moved smoothly, practiced for cameras, removing a board. Assembly, replacing it with a new module from a sealed tray, narrating each step in calm phrases about efficiency and scalable repair. When his unit powered on, the green light blinked twice. Someone near the glass exhaled in relief. Then the fan inside the casing gave a rough little stutter. Ethan heard it. Noah heard Ethan hear it. 30 seconds later, the warning light turned amber, then red. Damien smiled as if the color had betrayed him personally. "That unit may have pre-existing damage." Victoria said nothing. She only wrote something on her tablet. Ethan did not rush. He leaned close to his own controller and listened, not like a man guessing, but like a father outside a sick child's door, waiting for the cough that tells you whether the fever has broken. He removed one screw, lifted the corner of the casing, and pointed to a thin spacer seated beneath the heat bridge. "It's not the board," he said. "It's the way heat gets trapped before the board knows it's dying." The technician frowned. "That spacer comes factory set. Factory set wrong is still wrong." Ethan shifted the spacer a quarter inch, changed the angle of a small insulating washer, then guided the technician's hand through the same motion. "Feel that? Don't force it. If it fights you, it's misaligned." Noah stood a little taller, not proud in a loud way, relieved, as if for the first time all morning, someone was seeing the man he already knew. When Ethan powered the controller, the green light held. 10 seconds. 20. 40.
No amber. No smoke. No stutter.
The judge stopped tapping his pen. Behind the glass, a chair that had been scraping backward went still. Even Damien's smile held its shape too long, like paint drying over a crack. Victoria finally picked up the printed service log and Ethan's garage invoices, then turned to her assistant. "Pull Mr. Cross's internal development file. All revisions. All access history. Nothing gets deleted." Damien stepped forward quickly, voice soft enough to sound helpful. "Victoria, I can handle this privately. We don't want people misunderstanding a maintenance coincidence." Ethan gently closed his toolbox, leaving the old Kolu on top for the technician. "A fix that only works when I'm in the room isn't a fix," he said. Victoria looked from the stable green light to the service log under the side lamp, and the first real crack in Damien's story opened when her assistant whispered that his earliest company revision was dated 2 years after Ethan's first invoice. The assistant's whisper did not land like a verdict. It landed like a door opening somewhere no one had checked. Damien Cross's earliest company revision was dated 2 years after Ethan's first invoice, and for the first time that morning, the polished story on the expo stage had a visible seam. Victoria did not look at Ethan with pity. She looked at the documents. "Bring the development file here," she said. Damien's voice softened. "Victoria, this is becoming unfair to everyone involved." Ethan rested one hand on Noah's shoulder before the boy could speak. Fair doesn't get weaker when you look closer, he said. The printer in the corner began to hum, spitting out access logs, revision sheets, and internal approval notes in warm pages that curled at the edges. The smell of toner mixed with burnt plastic from the failed controller. Victoria's assistant laid the first stack beside Ethan's garage invoices, and the dates lined up badly for Damien. Not enough to end him. Enough to make the room stop pretending this was a misunderstanding. Then Noah tugged gently at Ethan's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered. "Mom's little book is still under the foam." Ethan closed his eyes for half a second, the way a man does when a memory touches a bruise. "Only if Ms. Hale asks," he said. Victoria heard that too. She turned toward Noah, not bending too low, not using the bright voice adults use when they want a child to perform. "Noah, is there something in the toolbox that belongs with these papers?" Noah looked at his father first. Ethan nodded once. The boy opened the toolbox with careful hands and lifted the false foam layer. Beneath it was a small notebook sealed in a cloudy plastic sleeve, its edges stained with old oil, its cover softened from years of being carried beside metal tools. Noah held it like it was breakable. "Mom said not to let rain or angry people get to it," he said. No one laughed. Ethan took the sleeve, but he did not open it right away. His thumb rested on the corner where Claire Brooks had once written a tiny C in blue ink. "My wife kept the trials," he said. "Failures too." Damien shifted. It was small, just the heel of one expensive shoe sliding back half an inch, but Victoria saw it reflected in the garage glass. When the sleeve was opened, the pages made a dry whisper. There were test dates, hand-drawn diagrams, heat marks shaded in pencil, and beside one symbol, Claire's handwriting. Not efficiency, safety cutoff. The Hale engineer leaned forward, then pulled Damien's presentation printout from the folder. The same symbol appeared in his diagram, copied cleanly, stripped of the warning note. Damien smiled too fast. "Common notation." "Then read it," Victoria said. The room tightened. Damien glanced at the page. "It indicates performance optimization under load." Ethan's face did not change, but Noah's small hand found his father's sleeve. The engineer looked up slowly.
No.
"It marks the failure point before ignition." The air conditioner clicked off, and the sudden quiet made every breath sound borrowed. Victoria turned another page and found a line written in Claire's hand. "If it saves someone we'll never meet, it was worth building." For one fragile moment, Ethan looked less like a man defending an invention and more like a husband standing beside a voice he thought the world had buried. Damien reached for his phone. "I think legal should handle this privately." Victoria placed her hand flat over the notebook, not taking it from Ethan, only making sure no one else could. "No," she said. "This started on my expo floor in front of my people, after my system erased a man's registration." She looked through the glass toward the main stage, where Damien's banner still glowed above the crowd. "It ends where everyone can see it." Victoria did not return to the stage with music or applause. She returned with a locked evidence cart, 2 security officers, 1 Hale engineer, and a little boy holding his father's hand so tightly the paper badge bent between their palms. The main expo floor still glittered under white lights, Damien Cross's banner still hanging above the central screen like nothing had changed. Ethan Brooks walked beside the cart, not in front of it, not like a man claiming victory, but like a man following a truth that had finally been allowed indoors. People turned as the toolbox was set on the same stage where it had nearly been thrown away. Its rust looked harsher under the spotlight. So did everything else. Damien stepped forward first, graceful under pressure, his voice warm enough to quiet the murmurs. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. What we have here is an unfortunate confusion involving an independent mechanic, some old notes, and a prototype that resembles public design concepts." A few heads nodded. It sounded reasonable. It sounded safe. Ethan looked at Noah, then at the toolbox. "I'm not here to ruin anybody," he said. "I'm here so the truth doesn't get buried with my wife." That sentence did not raise his voice, but it lowered the room. Victoria stood behind the podium, her tablet connected to the screen, But she did not rescue him yet. She let the evidence breathe. First came the image from the thumbnail no one had understood. The rusty toolbox photographed where it fell, with the silver prototype and yellowed blueprint edge visible beneath the tools. Then came Ethan's printed registration email, the one smeared with garage water and dust, shown beside the system record that claimed no registration existed. Damien gave a small, regretful smile. A printout can be altered. We all know that. For a moment he seemed to regain the floor. The judge with the sponsor pin straightened in visible relief. Then Victoria tapped the screen. The Harper Road service log appeared. Then the parts invoices, each dated before Damien's first filed revision. Old receipts prove purchases, Damien said smoothly. Not invention. Ethan nodded once. That's true. The honesty of it unsettled people more than denial would have. Victoria's eyes moved to him, and something like respect passed through her face before she hid it again. Which is why we keep going, she said. The screen changed to security footage from the night before the expo. Grainy, silent, blue-tinted, a side hallway, a badge scan. Damien's assistant entering the registration office after hours, followed 7 minutes later by the judge with the sponsor pin. Damien's smile did not disappear. It only stopped reaching his eyes. That was routine pre-event coordination, he said. We had hundreds of files to verify. Victoria tapped again. An internal email appeared with the subject line consulting fee finalized, dated 2 weeks before Ethan's registration vanished. A ripple moved through the crowd, not loud, but alive. Noah leaned closer to Ethan's side. Dad, that's the man from the counter, he whispered, pointing not wildly, not dramatically, just with the simple certainty of a child recognizing a face. Ethan gently lowered Noah's hand. You did fine, he murmured. Damien turned toward Victoria, still composed, but his hand slid toward the pocket where his phone had been all morning. Victoria, this is exactly why sensitive matters shouldn't be tried in public. People misunderstand timelines. Victoria looked at him for a long second. Then explain the symbol. The Hale engineer placed Claire Brooks's notebook on the document camera. Its oil-stained pages filled the screen, and beside it appeared Damien's clean presentation slide with the same copied mark. Damien inhaled as if preparing one final polished answer. But Victoria had already opened the last file, and the screen went black for half a second before the final test sequence loaded. The final test sequence loaded onto the screen, and the entire expo floor watched Damien Cross's clean slide appear beside Claire Brooks's oil-stained notebook. The same symbol sat in both places, but Claire's page carried the warning Damien had erased. Safety cutoff before ignition. Victoria did not look at Damien first. She looked at Ethan. Can you rebuild it here, from untouched parts? Ethan breathed once, slow and tired. Yes, ma'am. New components were placed on the table in sealed trays. No one touched the toolbox except Ethan and the Hale engineer. Damien was invited to explain his version first, and for the first time, his voice scraped instead of flowed. That mark improves performance under load, he said. The engineer shook his head. That mark prevents fire. A pen slipped from the judge's fingers and clicked against the stage. Ethan did not smile. He opened the toolbox, removed the prototype, the colu, and the yellowed blueprint, then set Claire's notebook beside them like a person being given a seat at the table. Noah stood just behind his father, both hands wrapped around the edge of the toolbox. Under the white lights, Ethan began to build. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. A washer turned a 1/4 inch. A spacer shifted away from the heat bridge. A wire routed exactly where Claire's pencil arrow had pointed years earlier. This part doesn't make it stronger, Ethan said quietly. It makes it safer. The crowd leaned in without realizing it. The machine powered on. Green. 10 seconds. 30. 1 minute. The load increased. The fan steadied instead of stuttering. No amber light.
No smoke.
No smell of burning plastic. Victoria turned to the audience, her face pale but clear. The original authors of this safety design are Ethan Brooks and Claire Brooks. No one clapped. Not at first. The silence was too heavy for applause. The giant screen still showed Claire's handwriting beside Damien's polished diagram, and there was nothing left for his suit, his title, or his beautiful words to hide behind. Damien's hand hovered near his pocket, then fell. The judge with the sponsor pins stared at the floor as if the white tiles had become a witness stand. Somewhere in the back, a phone vibrated against a table, loud as a bee in a church. Noah let out a breath he had been holding and whispered, "Dad." She saw Mom's note. Ethan placed one hand over the toolbox lid, not closing it yet. "Your mom was never trying to be famous," he said. "She was trying to keep people safe." Victoria stepped to the microphone. "The award decision is suspended. Mr. Cross's contract is frozen pending independent legal review. The judging panel will be recused, and every erased registration from this event will be audited." Damien opened his mouth, but no sentence came. The room that had laughed at a rusty toolbox now stood around it in complete silence, and Ethan Brooks, given the power to humiliate the man who stole from him, simply lowered his eyes to his son and chose not to waste the truth on revenge. The crowd did not burst into applause. It moved slowly, almost carefully, as if everyone had realized they were walking through the wreckage of a mistake. Damien Cross was escorted off stage by Hale security. Not shoved, not shouted at, just removed with a frozen contract folder under one arm and no cameras invited to follow. The judge with the sponsor pin handed over his badge. Victoria Hale ordered an independent legal review before the giant screen had even gone dark. Every erased registration, every consulting payment, every rejected safety warning would be audited. Then she turned to Ethan Brooks, who was kneeling beside Noah, placing Claire's notebook back into the toolbox with the same care a man gives to something still alive. "Mr. Brooks," Victoria said, her voice quieter now, "I owe you more than an apology." Ethan looked up. "Start with the system," he said. So she did. By sunset, Ethan's registration was restored. Claire Brooks's name was entered beside his as co-author, and the stolen award was voided. Victoria offered him a position leading a new safety review team, not as charity, not as a headline, but because the man who had been mocked for carrying a rusty toolbox had still chosen to protect strangers before defending himself. Ethan did not answer quickly. He looked at Noah first. "Your mom's name stays on it," he said. "Victoria Navid." "Always." A week later, the toolbox sat behind glass in the Hale Technologies safety wing, still rusted, still dented, not polished into something prettier for donors. Beside it were the yellowed blueprint, the Harper Road invoices, the service log, and Claire's open notebook beneath a small brass plate that read, "Respect the work before you judge the hands." Noah stood in front of it with both hands in his jacket pockets, reading the words twice. "They didn't clean it," he said. Ethan smiled faintly. "Good." Victoria stood a few steps away, giving them room, her tablet held at her side instead of between them like a wall. "Your father taught this company something we should have known already," she said to Noah. "Safety is not just engineering. It's character." Noah leaned against Ethan's side, no longer clutching the toolbox like someone might steal it, because for the first time, adults had protected the truth instead of asking a child to carry it. Ethan placed his hand on the glass, over the reflection of the old handle. He did not feel rich. He did not feel triumphant. He felt the quiet ache of being seen too late, and the grace of knowing it had still been in time. Around them, young engineers paused as they passed, lowering their voices without being told. Not from shock this time, from respect. And in that gentle silence, the rusty toolbox was no longer a symbol of poverty. It was proof that dignity can sit unnoticed for years, waiting for the day truth finally opens the lid.